Hey, welcome to Bruce's Garage. I'm Bruce, and this is my garage. Today, we're talking about a dash cam. Now, dash cams are almost a necessity in today's world. They can really help with insurance claims or potential issues around your vehicle. So, if you're thinking about a dash cam, I want you to join me as I'm going to take a very in-depth look at the new award-winning Vueroid Infinite S1 4K dash cam. So come on in and let's have some fun. Well, I want to thank Vueroid for giving me the opportunity to really test out and try this brand new dash cam. Now, they sent it to me at no cost, so I want to be transparent with you. And I installed it in a 2024 Honda CR-V, my wife's car. And I had not heard of Vueroid before, so this is all new to me in terms of that brand of dash cam. But you can see the camera here, and you can see that it's a pretty compact camera. It has a great adjustable front lens, as well as a nice screen for viewing footage or even just interacting with the menu. The rear camera here also is adjustable, which I really liked. Now, in today's video, I am going to go into a very in-depth review of the camera itself, of the installation process. We'll go through the app that is associated with the camera and actually get into the footage. So this is going to be one of those in-depth videos. Therefore, I recognize that some of you don't want to know every little thing or don't want to see all the installation steps. That's okay. I've bookmarked this whole video for you. So if you want to skip ahead to the section you're interested in, go ahead and do that. I created those for your convenience so that you didn't have to just sit through what you might think is a boring video. However, for those that really want something in depth and really want to understand installation or the details of this camera, this is your video today, and I appreciate you being here. All right, so while I was at SEMA in Las Vegas this year, I had an opportunity to meet with representatives from Vueroid, and I learned a few things about their camera and really what makes it different from others. There's a lot of dash cams on the market, and I wanted to know from their point of view what made it different. So let's take a listen into a couple excerpts from that interview at SEMA.
One thing that we can proudly introduce about our product is very reliable and very trustable and robust. So what kind of situation and environment, like hot temperature, in such a case, it never shut down. It just keep recording the situation outside. That is one thing that we can introduce. And the other one is very good image quality as compared to the other product in the market. But one thing very important part is the engineering, like tuning and such a things, because image tuning is really difficult to do that, because a lot of the combination of the parameters that we have to combine. So finally, it just to make the optimized image quality. So that is depends on the experience and the engineering, the manpower.
Hope you enjoyed a little bit of that insight. One of the things that I really learned that honestly I had no idea about was the proprietary image processing that goes into any dash cam in terms of understanding or interpreting an image. It's not just the sensor, it's not just the lens, it's not just the light. All of those things are important, don't get me wrong. But it's how the camera processes all of that information coming in. So certainly the hardware itself, the lens, the camera, the sensor, all of those things are important. But what Vueroid really illustrated to me was that it's that their engineering, the fine tuning, the tuning of the image that gives them a much higher image quality than their peers. So from my point of view, what makes the Vueroid camera different? Well, one of the things that I really liked as I got into this camera compared to several other cameras I've used is that number one is you can geofence the parking mode. And what I mean by that is because there's built-in GPS, which by the way, I think is a fantastic feature in the camera. And there's other cameras that do that. But for example, the camera I have in my car here does not have built-in GPS. So I don't want to take that for granted, but it has the built-in GPS. But what you can also do with that in the Vueroid is you can say, well, this is where my garage is at home, and I don't need the parking mode on when I'm inside my garage. So very easy from the menus in the camera, you can basically say, within X amount of yards of this location, I don't want the parking mode enabled. Pretty cool. Then the camera won't enable it at that location. And you can set up to 3 separate parking zones that you want to call safe, so to speak. So I thought that's pretty cool. Another feature they have that I'm not quite sure about, but it's an interesting attempt, is around artificial intelligence with license plate identification. So maybe the license plate isn't completely visible or it's not super clear, but you can save that image, upload it to the cloud to Vueroid's AI through the Veuroid Hub App, and actually it will then attempt to give you a better reading of what that license plate is. So that's something to think about. It again is a new technology, it's still developing, but is an interesting way. My only question would be, if indeed that works, would it hold up in court? Would insurance use that information because it's AI enhanced? You know, time will tell. Maybe down the line it would. I think right now it's still very new technology, but it's interesting that Vueroid is thinking in that direction, which also leads me to believe they're a forward-thinking organization. Now, the S1 4K is a 4K front camera and a 2.5K rear camera. Now, I wish that the rear cameras were 4K, but they're not. But I have seen the cameras that are 1080 HD, which really don't give great footage. So I was pleased that the Vueroid did have a bit higher resolution in the rear camera. They also have a lot of options that you can select in the app in terms of image quality, and one of those is the frames per second. So I've got the camera set, my wife's car, at 4K at 60 frames per second on the front. One of the first things you need to think about when you're installing a dash cam is how you're going to power it. You have a few options. So the simplest option, and this comes with the Vueroid, is you've got an accessory plug or the typical, what we might call the cigarette lighter adapter plug, and the other end plugs into the camera. This is the simplest, easiest way because you don't have to worry about wiring anything else up. You just have to route this to wherever your accessory port is. So that's option number one. Option number two, Vueroid also provides you with this hardwire kit. And again, it plugs into the dash cam and then plugs to a fuse. Now, typically though, to get to the fuse, you would use a fuse tap. And a fuse tap is just an adapter that connects into your existing fuse box. Vueroid did not include those, so I did buy these on Amazon. These are the fuse taps that I would need to use for this specific vehicle. You can buy accessory fuse taps that have all different types, or you can find out what fuse type your vehicle uses and buy the fuse tap for those. So essentially what the fuse tap does is this goes into an existing port that is wired already into your fuse box, and you would pick the right fuse to use, the right amperage. Then you put in 2 fuses in here, and so this taps in, hence the name fuse tap, taps into the fuse box. Then these wires end up connecting to that Vueroid hardwire kit. So on all honesty, I did mention to Vueroid, I think they ought to include a fuse tap accessory of all different styles in their package. That is fairly typical from my experience. I was a little surprised that they didn't. These are inexpensive. It's not really about the cost. It's more about ease of product and making it easy for the consumer to be able to install it. The last option, which actually I find kind of an interesting option and haven't done this before, is an OBD2 accessory port power cord. So OBD2 is your onboard diagnostic port that a mechanic would typically use if you have a check engine light or some other type of error code. And so this plugs into that port and gives you power all the time. So it will minimize, though, the drain on the battery, and it has some thresholds in terms of when to stop if the battery's getting low in the parked mode, etc. So this, I would say, is probably the number 2 easiest install beyond that accessory port, and this is probably almost the same thing. The benefit of this, of course, is that you're not wiring something other than routing this wire to the OBD2 port, and it's always powered. I think that is a benefit. So today, for simplicity of installation, I'm going to use this because I haven't used this port style before, and I want to make this install, frankly, as easy as we can. So this is what we're going to use to install and get the power to the Vueroid camera. Now, let's just get started putting it in. So as you're looking in from the driver's side, the OBD2 port is right under here. It does not require removal of the dash. And in my guess is we will be able to wire through here, and this trim, the rubber trim here, is very easy to pull out and push back in place. And so we will probably wire through there, then we'll wire up through here and over to the middle of the glass where we will have it installed. So as we get further into the install, I want to just show you the hookups on how they appear on the camera itself. So you can see we have 2 connections in here. One is to the rear camera and the other is to our power source. So the reason I'm showing you this is because when you mount this camera, you also need to be aware of how these cables are going to fit. And so sometimes when you're mounting it, it's good to have these cables connected before you do anything else. I've already put the memory card in here, which goes right over here. And then this sticks on the glass. Placement is important. Just remember to keep it out of the line of sight of view for the driver if you are able to do that. You don't want this to be distractful. So now I'm going to just play with some ideas of where this might be best to install. And as I'm sitting here in the driver's seat, I don't really see the camera very much at all here. This might be a good spot. I want to leave, again, enough room here that I can hide these cables here, but where I'm not so close to this that I can hardly get those moved in. So I want to show you in terms of removing the trim here, because we're going to wire behind here up into this mirror assembly and then under the headliner. To remove the trim, there's typically just clips. Honestly, I wasn't sure where those clips were on this Honda CR-V. I did a quick search and found it and was able just to simply pull that trim piece down. This is what that trim piece looks like. Again, it goes in like this. So you can see there's a couple spots here and you've got clips up here. So this is fairly typical, not a big deal. You just have to use the trim tool and find out where you need to put pressure because you always feel like you're going to break something. All right, so I have the camera in place. It is mounted. Remember, there's a little plastic cover over the lens of the camera. Make sure you take that off. All right, so you can see we have the assembly back in place. The wires essentially are going in here, under here. And then through the mirror assembly. And then I've started up under the headliner. Now, nothing special you need to do on the headliner. Honestly, usually you can just pull it down a little bit with the trim tool. I'll see how that came out. If it's doing that, take one of those, if you can't get it up there enough, take one of the little wire hold downs that's basically glues on the glass with a little sticky, and then it holds the wires in place. And I do that under the headliner a bit so you can't see it at all. I'm sitting in the driver's seat and you're looking back at me here with the headliner. You can see I am literally just shoving these up under there. You don't want to really mess with the headliner any more than you have to. But again, if it keeps, and I may have to do that, if this keeps coming out because I'm not getting it far enough in there, then I will use those little sticky things right up in here and I'll show you how that works. So this is what those little wire things are, the little hold down. You can see it's designed, unfortunately, only to hold one wire. So we may have to use a couple. But I'm going to use a couple, I think, up in that headliner, just one for each cable, just to keep it snug under there since it keeps wanting to pop out. And just a little trick, hook it on the wire before you stick it up in the headliner here, because it's going to be real hard to do that otherwise. So I've got it peeled, I've got it on the cable, and then I'm going to push it way up in there. Okay, so we've got it all tucked in up here, and I think we're pretty good on that. But now we have to come down this A-pillar. Now, one of the most important things to note is you see this is marked side curtain airbag. What we don't want to do is wire these in front of an airbag, because that can impede the flow of the airbag in the event one needs to deploy. So in order to do that, you got to pull this trim and then put these wires behind the airbag, which is what we're going to do next. All right, so you can see I've got the A-pillar trim off. I did need to find a YouTube video on how to remove the A-pillar trim on this. It's a little bit tricky. And then there's an airbag clip here that I'm going to have to remove to reconnect onto the trim piece, but the video shows all of that. But I wanted to really show you this assembly. This is the airbag. These are wires already. So we can wire this, we can put these wires, these cables back here, and that way we're away from the airbag. And so that's what I am going to do with both of these cables for right now. We're going to go down and then we'll go down the side of the dash. All right, so I want you to see that I've put these wires attached to this loom here. So I know this is safe. So I went ahead and wire tied onto that loom so that there's no risk of them coming loose, and it keeps things nice and tidy. And now I'm gonna get it all the way down to the bottom there, and then I'm gonna put this trim piece back on, and then we will route down to the OBD2 port for power, and then we'll work on that rear camera, which is one of these cables. So the power is all run to the dash cam. We're now wiring for the rear camera. You can see I'm just going along this trim. These rubber seals typically just pull right off, and your trim is typically all connected with plastic pieces that you can pull back. Sometimes you have to pull kind of hard, but they come off pretty easy. So I'm going to wire this all the way to the rear of the vehicle for the rear camera. So we've got the rear camera wired all the way from the front out to the back here. Camera will mount like so up here. And I've run through. What I need to do now is just where this connection is here, I'm going to tape over that. One is to keep it connected, and two is just to ensure no moisture gets into the connection. Again, on the back camera, just like the front, there's a little piece of plastic on the lens. I'm going to take that off. Keep this away from the defrost. This camera also adjusts like the one in front. So we'll have to look at the camera footage to see if we need to adjust it. Now the good news is there's enough here. This is fully open. I thought I was going to have to get an extension cable, but I think I got it in. Well, I hope the installation detail was helpful to you. I appreciated all the options that Vueroid provided in terms of powering the camera. I do want to let you know that in reference to the hardwire kit that just had the wires on the end, and I mentioned it didn't have a fuse tap, when I did share that information with Vueroid before I met with them at SEMA, but I also talked about that at SEMA. And interestingly, they said, we are now going to be providing the fuse tap. And so I appreciated them taking the feedback, but it was also interesting to me the reason that they didn't provide it at first. And I assumed, honestly, that it must have been a cost kind of thing. But it really wasn't. What it was, this was their first release in North America. And historically, when they've used this camera in Korea, where they're manufactured, no one mentioned about a fuse tap. No one used fuse taps. They simply took those bare wires and wired them around the actual metal part of the fuse and then just put the fuse back into the fuse box in the car. So it's a cultural or just a different way of looking at things. I was very uncomfortable thinking about wrapping the wire around the metal part of the fuse and putting it back in. I suppose that works, and there is an inline fuse with the Vueroid hardwire kit, but the fuse tap to me is just a much cleaner installation. So he mentioned to me that they've already secured a supplier and will be including fuse taps in the future. So I thought that was really good. So now that you know how to install it, we need to get into how do I look at the footage? How do I use the Hub app from Vueroid? So you go to your app store and you're going to download the Vueroid app. And this app is available in both app stores and very easy. One of the things you need to do is once you download it is you want to make sure that you update the firmware on the camera. So if the camera needs a firmware update, do that first. Now, once you get the app downloaded, you've updated the firmware, It's a very intuitive app. It's certainly very easy to use. You can see that you have a lot of information available to you, including camera settings. You can view the download, or you can view and download footage. You can use the AI features. Very simple to use, but it's a very comprehensive app. I was very impressed with it. To connect to the camera, what's pretty cool is there's a button on the camera that's for Wi-Fi. Once the camera's on, you just press that button. It will turn the Wi-Fi on, and then you connect from your phone. Now, I'm going to show you here in real time. You're seeing me connect, and I let this run so you could see the amount of time that it takes to connect to the camera. It's not too long, but it's also not instantaneous, and I wanted you to see that so you know it's about 20 seconds to connect. Now, once you connect in the app, you can see all the footage. They're organized in small files with the front and rear camera linked. Again, assuming you install both, which I would highly recommend you do. You can easily identify any events, parking events, because they're organized in those tabs. They're also organized by date. You can play back footage within the app, which would help you identify what you want to download. And then once you've identified you want to download it, you press the download button. I'm going to again show you this in real time so you can see how long it takes, or in this case, in my opinion, how fast it is to download the 4K footage. And I actually have it set on the highest, so I have the 4K, 60 frames per second at the highest bit rate. So that's how much information is being communicated and stored from the image itself. So the higher the bit rate, the more data, the larger the files. The same thing with 4K and 60 frames per second. So these are larger files, and they're downloading quickly. The rear camera downloads even quicker because it is not 4K footage and it's only 30 frames per second. But you can download, you can select, do I want front camera? Do I want rear camera? You have to download those separately. As I mentioned, you can set the image quality within the app itself. And this is where you can set what frame rate that you want, what quality of the image, and the bit rate. Again, I have chosen 4K 60. They're larger files. I have a 256 gig secure digital card. It's all been fine. I have not had any issues with that at all. There's a lot of other settings you can use as well related to the parking mode, event recording. I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory. The user guide is pretty helpful as well. But there's a lot of configuration. I think that's what I want you to know. And then you have a nice comprehensive driving log as well that I think is helpful in identifying if there's any specific footage you want to review. All right, now let's get out of the app and let's just start talking about the actual camera footage itself, using both day and night examples and front and rear cameras. I wanted to give you a sense of how the camera performs. So remember, if we want to look at footage, we have to be in the vehicle, we have to connect to Wi-Fi with the Vueroid app. And again, I want you to see all of this in real time. I'm just showing you how I would normally review the footage. So I actually selected some footage in the app, and you can see on the right side, I'm showing you are actual snippets that I downloaded, while I'm also showing you on the left what it looks like in the app itself. And notice at the bottom of the image, you have some detail. You have GPS coordinates. You have the speed of your vehicle. You have camera settings, the date and time of the actual recording. Pretty cool. All of that documentation is there. I love it. Now, here we're seeing the actual, so you're seeing full-size footage now from the front camera at night. I would call this pretty decent footage. It is a bit noisy, which is expected in low light situations. Any video camera gets noisier in lower light situations and the Vueroid is no different than any other. The rear camera footage, of course, the resolution is smaller. I've shown it full size here so that, again, you can see the difference. And it is noisier than the front image, which again is characteristic of low light and a lower resolution image. And the rear camera is only 30 frames per second. So we're not going to get as good a quality. But when we switch over to daytime footage, you can see just how sharp and beautiful daytime footage is. It's definitely far superior. It's super sharp. Details are easily recognizable. The rear camera looks great in day footage as well. Definitely nice to have something superior than the typical 1080 rear camera. Overall, I would tell you I'm very pleased with the footage quality on the Vueroid from both the front and rear cameras. I think you get really decent footage. It's obviously not as good at night, but certainly a usable footage should it be necessary to document, again, an incident that occurs. Well, you've gotten a lot of information about the Vueroid. We've talked through the specs, we've talked through Vueroid's take on what makes it different, some of the things that I've liked, as well as how to install it. We've looked at some of the footage. So let me just bring all of this together and give you my final conclusions and my overall impressions of the Vueroid S1 4K Infinite Dash Cam, both the front and the rear cameras. First of all, I would tell you it's intuitive, it's easy to operate. I love that the camera itself has a screen. I love that it's got some decent buttons that are labeled right there rather than one button or two buttons and are on the side of the camera. I've experienced just all different kinds of configurations in different cameras. I think the Vueroid gets this right in the bullseye by making it very easy to operate. I love that it comes with a circular polarizer filter. Love that the lens is adjustable on both the front and rear cameras as well. I think that makes things really easy to ensure that you're getting the right angle and the right footage you need. The Vueroid app is excellent. It connects fairly quickly. Certainly the download is much better than what I've experienced in other applications. Sometimes I wish I didn't have to be in the car and I didn't have to download. Then you start getting into cloud kind of based applications and those things, and they bring their own pros and cons as well. So just recognize most of these cameras you connect through Wi-Fi and you have to be in the car, near the car when you're doing that. Overall, the footage, I think, as you've heard me say, I think the 4K footage, first of all, daytime footage, both the front and rear camera, is excellent. I have no complaints whatsoever about daytime footage. Nighttime footage, I honestly wish it was better. I think it's in the acceptable category. Certainly at night, you have low light. There's no camera that I have found that is perfect, but it is, at least you have some images. Should, again, a question of whose fault an accident is, did you go through the red light or not? Those kinds of things. I think the camera is going to be able to answer those questions. When you start getting into license plate identification at night with limited light, I think that may be where there's some challenges. Now, you do have the AI feature. Again, I'm not sure if you don't have enough of the image captured to begin with. I don't know that AI it can't make up a license plate, so there has to be some portion of that that is visible in order for it to even give a better reading of what that license plate is. So I don't know how much the AI is going to help in the night mode. The last thing that I really, really like, and this is available on some other cameras, but I had not experienced it till this one, is powering through the onboard diagnostic, the OBD port. This made the installation just that much easier. So I didn't need a fuse tap, and I just plugged right into the OBD2 port, which then also enables that parking mode because that port is always hot. So that is a really nice feature. You will have to buy the OBD port cable if you go that route separately. That's okay to me. I don't expect them. That's a little bit heavier cable and you got that big connection. I don't expect them to include that in every camera, as most people probably, if they want to use that, they're willing to buy it. But you have alternatives. You always can go into the accessory port, the cigarette lighter plug, or you can hardwire into the fuse box itself. All right, so what could be better? What didn't I like about the Vueroid? Well, number one, as I mentioned, I'm not thrilled with the nighttime camera, the video. I think, I don't know if it can be better. I wish it was better. Let me just say that. Technology just maybe isn't quite there yet, but I would like to have better capabilities. In particular is, as I mentioned, I'm not thrilled with rear camera. It is better that it's not just 1080p, which most or many cameras have 1080p in the rear. So Vueroid upgraded that to the 2.5K, which I think is great. But I think you get into a little bit less quality, again, when you're talking about night. It's 30 frames a second, and it's at night with 2.5K. 4K would be, again, a little bit better, but even on the front camera at 4K, in low light, you're still challenged to get really great images. I think it is what it is, but that's one of the things that I would like to have seen differently. The other thing, I was really, really surprised when I opened up the camera box, and this is a premium dash cam. We're not talking about a $100 dash cam here. So when I opened it and when I started looking at all the supplies, and it had the circular polarizer, which is great, it had the accessory cord for power, it had the fuse for power, but it didn't have a fuse tap or a fuse tap kit. And I had just installed a few months ago a $100 dash cam that came with a fuse tap kit that had every different type of fuse tap. Well, at least Vueroid heard us, and that's being changed. So in the future, they will include fuse tap kit. I suspect right now, if you buy one, it's not going to have the fuse tap kit. It's okay. Look, they're inexpensive. So don't let that deter you. You can get a fuse tap kit off of Amazon. I have them linked below in the description for less than $10. It's just one of those things that you want to know when you buy it, because as soon as that camera comes, you're probably ready to install it, as I was the day I got the Vueroid. And I opened up the box, so I'm getting ready. I moved the cars around. I'm getting all ready to install, and I don't have everything I needed. That was the part that disappointed me the most. And I think now that Vueroid is going to include those, and that they're not in there for today, that if you're going to buy one, you're going to need to buy a fuse tap if you're going to connect in that method. You also need to have a secure digital card, an SD card, the memory card that goes in the side of the camera. You will need to buy one of those separately. I like the fact that Vueroid does have their own brand. I like keeping things all in the family. And remember, if you act between November 20th through the first part of December, while supplies last, you will get an SD card made by Vueroid, or labeled by Vueroid, at least branded by them. You will get that included with your camera. So I have links again all below. I hope this has been helpful for you. Look, I think the Vueroid S1 4K dash cam is an excellent camera overall. I am very pleased with it. My wife is very pleased with it. It's not in her way. She doesn't even see the camera the way, again, we mounted it behind the mirror there. So I think it's a definite winner. I would encourage you to take a look at it if you're in the market for a dash cam. I appreciate you watching. Hey, if this was helpful for you, please don't forget a like, the thumbs up, and If you want, don't miss more coverage, more videos, subscribe. I would appreciate that. Help support my channel and all the work that I'm doing to bring you helpful information. So I appreciate you watching today. Just remember, whatever you're going to do, go have fun in your garage. Have a great day.